We're ready to create our bar chart now. In the UI, we see that we have a container with shadow on it, and we also have a column widget inside containing the bar chart. So let's start by creating this container. Let's scroll down to the child count, and for now we'll just change this to 1 and hit save. And in order to make the container with a shadow, we need to edit this container that we're returning. So underneath our color, let's add a decoration, box decoration. For the color, we'll set it to colors.white. And then the box shadow will be an array with box shadow. And then we set the color to colors.black 12. The offset, we'll set that to 0, 2. And then the blur radius, we'll set that to 6.0. Then we'll hit save. And we get this error because we have color outside of our box decoration, so we can delete the colors.red right here. Hit save. And now we see that we have a container with the shadow underneath it. We also have rounded corners, and we can easily add that by going back into our box decoration and adding another property called border radius. And this time we'll say border radius dot circular, and we can just set the radius to 10.0. Hit save, and now our borders are curved. Our container is going to have a child, and we'll call the child bar chart. And the bar chart is going to take in our list of weekly expenses. So we can just pass in weekly spending, which is imported from the data.dart file. Now inside our lib directory, we're going to make a new folder called widgets. And inside widgets, we'll make a new file called bar_chart.dart. And here we need to make a stateless widget. So we do that by typing stl and hitting enter. And then we'll call it bar chart. And remember to import material.dart. In order to import expenses, we need to pass in a list of doubles. So final list double, and we'll call it expenses. And then the constructor will be this.expenses. Go back to homescreen.dart and remember to import bar chart now. And hit save. And then we have an error when we pass in weekly spending, and that's because we need to pass in a named argument. So we'll just call it expenses and hit save, because the variable inside here is expenses. But we can also just remove the curly braces right here. And then the expenses here is not necessary. And then once we hit save, we see that the error disappears. Looking back at the UI, we see the first part of this bar chart is a column. So let's go to the bar chart, and we'll move this over a bit so we can see the UI when we code. We're going to build a column, and this column is going to have children. And the first widget inside our column is going to be a text widget that says weekly spending. And then we'll set the style, text style, font size 20.0, font weight.bold, and we'll set the letter spacing to 1.2. And just hit save. And now we see the text appears. Underneath the weekly spending, we see that we have a row widget that consists of an icon button, text, and then another icon button. So let's add a sized box first, and we'll set the height to 5.0. And then we'll create our row. So let's make our icon button. The icon will be icons.arrow back. The icon size will be 30.0. And then on pressed, we'll leave it empty for now. But if you were to implement functionality, the back arrow would most likely change some kind of date range, which would change the data loaded in here. Let's hit save. Now we have our first arrow. And then let's just add our second arrow now. So we'll copy our icon button and paste it again underneath. Instead of arrow underscore back, we'll do arrow underscore forward and hit save. And lastly, we need our text in between these two widgets. And we'll set it to November 10th, 2019, November 16th, 2019. Style, text style, font size 18.0, font weight. We'll make it font weight.w600, which is semi-bold. And then letter spacing will be 1.2. And hit save. Now if we compare what we have in our app right now to the desired UI, we can see that the weekly spending is centered, but the date range selector is not centered, and it looks like it's aligned to the left. So all we have to do is inside our row widget, we can add something called main axis alignment dot space around. And what this does is it creates an even amount of space between our widgets, and it puts half the space between the widgets in the leading and the trailing. So now our widgets are spaced out correctly. Our UI shows that we have a row widget here for our bar chart, and inside our row widget, these are columns. So we'll have a text, and then a bar, and then another text. And then we'll have 7 different bars. So underneath our row, let's create size box height 30.0. And then we'll make our row with children. And for now, we'll just create one child. And the first child will be a bar widget. And I'll take in a label. And we'll call this one SU, which is short for Sunday. It'll take in an amount spent, which is expenses sub-0. And then it needs to take in a most expensive value, so we know how to scale the bars proportionally. And for now, we'll just set that equal to 200. So let's write our bar right now. Underneath our bar chart class, we'll create a new stateless widget, and it will be called bar. The 3 instance variables will be final string label, final double amount spent, final double most expensive. And then we need to create a constructor, this.label, this.amount spent, and this.most expensive. And make sure you include the curly braces before and after it. And once we save, we see that we're getting a pixel overflow error. And that's because inside our home screen, we set the height of our container to 100. So we can just remove this and hit save. Now for our bar class, we want to edit the build method here. So the first thing we need to know is what is the height of our bar. So we'll create a variable called final bar height and set it equal to the amount spent divided by the most expensive bar, so the bar that has the highest value, and then multiply this by the maximum height a bar can be. So we will multiply by a variable called max bar height. And this represents the max height we want our bar to be. Let's write final double max bar height, and we'll set it equal to 150.0. And hit save. Now for our bar, we know that each one of these is a column, and the column is going to have a text, a container, and then another text label. So let's first change the container to a column with children, and remember to put the semicolon at the end. The first child will be text, and this is going to be the amount spent. So we can do this by escaping the first $sign with a backslash, and then we use string interpolation to pass in the amount spent, dot toString as fixed, and then we want to only show 2 decimal places, so we'll put this as 2, and remember to put the closing curly brace. Next we have the container with a height of bar height, which is what we just calculated. The width we'll set it to 18.0. The decoration will be box decoration, color, and then we'll do theme.ofContext.primaryColor. And if you guys remember, we declare this inside our main.dart file, where we set the theme data primary color equal to colors.green. And by setting it to the context.primary color, instead of just doing colors.green, we're able to change the primary color here, and it'll change throughout the whole entire app. Now we can just add the border radius. We'll set the border radius .circular 6.0. And then lastly, we need another text box. And in this case, we want to say Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And we passed in the label here, so we can just call label. And then hit save. And now we see that our first bar appeared. Let's style the text and add some spacing. For our amount spent, we'll do style text style, font weight .w600. And then for our label, style text style, font size 16.0, font weight .w600, so also semi-bold. And then to add some spacing between these, all we have to do is add some size boxes between the text and container. The first one will be height of 6.0, and the second one will be height of 8.0. And now we have a good amount of spacing between the text and container. Now before we create the other bars, let's calculate the most expensive item. So we'll pass in most expensive here. And right before the return inside our build method, we'll create a variable called double most expensive and set it equal to 0. And then we're going to loop through our expenses. So expenses.forEach, we get a double price. And then we want to check if the price is greater than the current value of most expensive. If it is, then we want to set most expensive equal to price. Otherwise, we don't do anything. So this is going to loop through our 7 expenses that were randomly generated inside our weekly spending, and it'll grab the highest price. So let's hit save, and now we see that our bar became a lot longer because it's going to be proportional to the other values. Let's add the other bars now. We can copy this bar and then paste it 6 more times. For the second bar, we'll say the label is MO for Monday. We'll change expenses to 1. Next we have Tuesday. So TU, 2. Next is Wednesday. That's expenses 3. Thursday, expenses 4. FR for Friday, 5. And then the last one is Saturday, so SA. And that's expenses index 6. Hit save, and all of our new bars appeared. In order to space them out evenly, like in the picture, and to have them start at the bottom of the row, all we have to do is go up to our row, which contains the bar widgets, and we're going to access main axis alignment. So this is the horizontal alignment, and do main axis alignment dot space evenly. So now the bars are spaced out evenly. And now to make the bars start at the bottom of the bar chart, we have to access cross-axis alignment dot end. Hit save, and now they're at the bottom. Lastly, let's add some padding around our column widget, because in the image, we see that we have padding around our column here. So if we scroll back up to our column widget, and then hit Command period, add padding, and we'll change the edgeinsets.all to edgeinsets.all 15.0, and then we'll hit save, and now it's spaced out nicely. If we hot restart the app, we'll see that the values change, because inside data.dart, this is being reloaded every time, so we can have a more dynamic feeling in our app. And then of course you guys always have the option to add real data to this app. And let's hot restart the app one more time. And we see that the prices change accordingly.